Hi there. I wanted to make the first screencast of the year, and I'm just going to review a little bit about some of the basics of the Java programming language, including assignment statements, data types, conditional statements, and loops. Okay, so to do this, I made a sample program that I basically show all of these features of Java in. So let's look at it. Okay, so under the main method, I have declared three int variables, and I just called them int x, int y, and int z. And then I made double variables. I declared double variables called double x, double y, and double z. And then I have a few assignment statements, which always have a single equal sign and end in a semicolon. So here I'm assigning a value of 7 to the variable int x. In the next statement, I'm trying to assign 7.0 to int x, but because this has a 0.0 after it, Java will treat the literal value 7.0 as a double value, and then try to assign it to an int variable, and it's not going to let you do it, and it's going to give you an error message: incompatible types, possible lossy conversion from double to int. So you cannot provide or supply a double value to an int variable. So I'm going to have to comment that out so that the program will run. Okay, so now I assigned 8 and 9 to int y and int z, and then I make similar assignment statements for the double variables. Now notice in these first two statements, the first one I assigned an int literal value of 7 to the double variable double x, and that's allowed because Java will automatically promote an int value to being a double value if it gets assigned to a double variable or is used in an expression where a double literal value is needed. So that means these two statements on line 28 and 29 are virtually identical or result in the same outcome. Okay, so now I have two assignment statements assigning 8.0 to double y and 9.0 to double z. Okay, so let's look at this first system.out.println statement. Here I'm concatenating string values to numeric values. So they're all plus signs. So Java is going to go through, and when it encounters a string value and a numeric value, it's going to automatically change the numeric value into a string value so that the result is going to be a string value. So that's why here when I have all of these strings with plus signs and numeric variables in between, it's going to convert those numeric values to being strings and print out that entire statement. Okay, now in the next two system.out.println statements, you might expect them to be the same, but they actually aren't. Because if you look at the first one, I have a string that then I have a plus sign, then I add three int variables, or the values of those variables. So what's going to happen is Java is going to go from left to right with the plus statements. So the first string is going to be has a plus and then an int value. So a string with a plus and an int value is going to result in a string. So that's really string concatenation. Okay, so now we have a string and we have another plus and an int value. So that's going to be string concatenation. And then now we'll have a bigger string with a plus and an int value. So that's going to be string concatenation again. So the result is that when you run it, you're going to get int x plus int y plus int z is, and you're going to get 7, 8, 9. Okay, now in the third system.out.println, this time I have int x plus int y plus int z in parentheses. Now that takes precedence over pretty much any other operation in Java. So int x plus int y plus int z, that's going to happen first, and that's going to be int division because you only have int expressions with plus signs. So it's going to do 7 plus 8 plus 9, get, let's see, 24. Then it's going to basically have, you're going to have a numeric value concat with a plus sign in between a string value, so that's going to be concatenation. So it's going to do int x plus int y plus int z, and then it's going to do is, and it's going to put 24, and it's going to basically convert 24 into being the string 24. So let's see if that is what happens. All right, so first of all, I get int x plus int y plus int z is 7, 8, 9, and int x plus int y plus int z is 24. Alrighty, now let's look on some additional code that I have here. Now I make an assignment to the double variable double z, and I set that equal to, or I assign it a value of int x divided by int y. Now because int x and int y are int variables, when I do int division, it's going to do the division, get a real decimal value, and then truncate everything after the decimal point. So that means I'm going to get, let's see, and I'm going to add /n/n, and actually that means I'm going to get 7 divided by 8. That's going to give you 0, and then it's going to assign 0 to a double value. So what does it do? It just tacks on 0.0. Alright, this is a good place. I'm going to comment out the code, the first system.out.println statement, so they don't kind of muddy the water. So of course, to comment something out, I change, if it's many lines of code like it is here, I'm just going to change that code into a multi-line comment. And I can do that by doing / asterisk, and then when I want that comment to end, I do an asterisk /, and voila, that code is now commented out. Okay, so let's see if that happens. And actually, before, well, let me just go over what this big these two system.out.println statements say. Okay, so you'll notice the escape character /n/n kind of embedded inside the string literal values that it's printing. So that forces a line feed and basically a carriage return. Okay, so now I have a plus sign between string values, so that's just going to be string concatenation. And notice in Java, if you want your code to continue, or the same statement to continue on a different line in the code editor window, all you need to do is hit enter and put a plus sign, and then automatically the next, what comes after will be on a new line in the output. I'm sorry, it will be part of the same statement, just on a new line in the code editor window. Okay, so I have, I'm joining a bunch of strings together, and now to make this text output in the output window. And now I have system.out.println, for example, if int x is, and then plus int x. So that's going to concatenate what the actual value of the variable int x is when this system.out.println is executing. And I do the same thing for int y. I say it's been assigned a value of double z because 7 divided by 8 is 0, and then 0.0 is added to, and then make a double value. So let's see if this works. Okay, so sure enough it does. If int x is 7, int y is 8, 7 divided by 8 is going to be assigned, when it's assigned to a double variable, you're going to get 0.0. Because 7 divided by 8 is 0 and 0.0 is added. So sure enough, that's what I get. Okay, now I have a conditional statement, a very simple conditional statement, and I'm going to concatenate or comment out the code I just went over. Okay. Oops, no, I don't want to go that far. I want to go there. All right, so here's a basic conditional statement that says if int x is less than 7, system.out.println int x is less than 7. Else, if int x greater than 7, system.out.println int x is greater than 7. Else, well, the only other scenario, since int x is an int value, would be that x is 7. Int x is 7. So I just have an else, system.out.println int x is equal to 7. I could have also done else if int x equals 7, system.out.println int x is equal to 7. That would mean the exact same, produce the exact same results. So let's see what we get. You may recall underneath where I declared the variables, I gave int x an initial value of 7. So when this code executes, it should basically skip over this part. It's going to evaluate int x, says is int x less than 7? No, it's not. So it's going to go down to else if is int x greater than 7. That's going to be false, so it's going to continue on and finally say, okay, is int x equal to 7? Well, yes it is, so I'm going to do what is inside the curly braces or block of code following that, and that is to print int x is equal to 7. So when we run it, we should get int x is equal to 7, and sure enough we do. Okay, so now I have a nested loop, a nested for loop to look at. So basically I'm executing, I'm going to have a loop that is for int equals I less than 10, I plus plus, and then for int j equals 0, j less than 10, j plus plus. I'm going to have a few lines of code in between. Then I'm going to basically have a few print line statements that are kind of going to describe what's happening in my loop. So in reality, this is the code I'm going to be executing. For int I equals 0, I less than 10, I plus plus, and then open curly brace, and then for int j equals 0, j less than 10, j plus plus, open curly brace, and then I'm going to do something. In this case, I'm just going to basically print out what the values of I and j are every time the loop executes. So I wrote this code and kind of embedded a few system.out.println statements in it just so that the output will kind of narrate what's happening. So I say, okay, int loop count, I made an int variable called loop count equals 0. Then I had a line that prints, the outer loop starts executing with its count variable I being equal to 0. Then in my code I start into the outer loop and I print out the outer line loop is now executing. Then I have the inner loop, which also goes from 0 to 9. And then on the inside of the block of code for the inner loop, what do? I print out what the values of I and j are. And I and j are the count variables for the outer loop and the inner loop. And then I also increment the variable loop count plus plus. So basically, when all of this is done executing, loop count plus plus will have a value equal to the number of times the code inside the inner loop was actually executed. Okay, and then I have a little statement saying when all is said and done, any statements in the inner loop have been executed loop count times. And then each time also, I think I should have said, each time before the inner loop is executed again, or the outer loop moves up its count variable is incremented by 1, I also print out a statement that kind of denotes that. So basically, we're kind of executing a basic nested loop where the inner loop goes from 0 to 9, or the outer loop goes from 0 to 9, and then the inner loop goes from 0 to 9. And whatever is in here where it says do something is going to get executed 10 times 10 or 100 times. So let's see what happens. Okay. Alright, so consider the nested loop. Alright, do something. In I equals 0, I less than 10, I plus plus, and j equals 0, j less than 10, j plus plus. I'm going to have, what's going to happen? The outer loop's going to start executing. Then the inner loop is going to execute 10 times. All the while, the outer loop in count variable is going to remain 0. Then the count variable for the outer loop is going to go up by 1, and then the inner loop is going to execute another 10 times. And then the outer loop is going to be, variable is going to be incremented by 1. The inner loop is going to be executed another 10 times, and so on until finally the last time the outer loop is going to have a value of 9. The inner loop is going to go from 0 to 9. So the statement will have been executed 100 times. Basically what's inside the inner loop. Okay, and by the way, you could also write this same code with 2 nested while loops. And it would look like this. It would look like you would start I equal to 0, then you would have a statement that says, okay, while I is less than 10, do all of this, and then inside there, it's going to say int j equals 0 while j is less than 10, do this, and then I'm going to make sure I have to increment j each time, and then at the end I'm going to have to increment I. So basically the same thing's going to happen. The outer loop is going to go 10 times, the inner loop is going to go 10 times, and so whatever do something, if I have any lines of code where do something is, it's going to be executed 100 times. Alright, let's see if I can step into this and kind of show you what is, let's see, going on. Alright, let me do this. Let's see, where is it? Oh, did I get rid of, oh no, here. Alright, I'm going to put a breakpoint there and there, and then I'm going to put a blank line of code, and then let me just put, actually instead, I'm just going to do system.out.println I is now plus I and plus, and j is now plus j. Okay, so I'm going to put what are called breakpoints. And breakpoints, they're debugging tools. So essentially, when you put a little red box here, when your code comes to the point where it's about to execute that line of code, the execution is gonna stop, and then you can go line by line executing the program one line at a time. So that's going to help hopefully show you how the flow of execution of those statements is going to go. So let's try it. Let's see, what did it do? Let me go back to my code and see what I did wrong. For int, oh, I put a semicolon. There should not be a semicolon there. All right. Oh, I have to do debug instead of run. So I have to do debug project. Okay, so now every time I hit F5, you're going to see the green line bounce around and show you which line of code is about to be executed next. So I should see the green line go from here, then it's going to cycle through here 10 times. Then it's going to execute this again. Then it's going to cycle in here another 10 times, and so on and so on. So let's see. Yep. There we go. So you'll see that inside those that for loop gets incremented by the outer one gets incremented by 1, and while that's happening, the inner loop is also, each time the outer loop goes once, the inner loop goes once. The inner for loop gets executed. All right. Okay, that's enough of that. All right, and while you're using these debugging tools and your program stopped, you can simply remove the breakpoints and continue on running, and you won't. You can basically allow your program to continue operating to its end. All right, this was a lot of talking. I hope it was helpful. I'm not sure if it was or not, but that's at least a little bit for, I hope it was helpful. And I'm going to make it a second screencast that's going to show me solving some of the problems in Practice It in just a minute. All right, cheers.